Hello, this is Joel Bowman for SCS Matters LLC, and this is an SCS training video. This brief video introduces anchoring, one of what we call the Big Three of NLP. The Big Three include anchoring, submodality shifts, and advanced language patterns. Eventually, we plan to have videos on all three of the Big Three. This video is based on the SCS publication, Healing with Language. Anchoring is covered in Section 6. Anchors are a naturally occurring phenomenon. The brain learns by making associations. This leads to that, or this causes that. Most of these associations are formed below the level of conscious awareness. Anchoring is stimulus-response conditioning. When Pavlov discovered that he could train dogs to salivate at the sound of a tuning fork by pairing the sound of the tuning fork with the presentation of meat powder, the science of classical conditioning was established. Meat powder naturally produced salivation in the dogs. Pavlov conditioned the dogs to expect the meat powder following the sound of the tuning fork. Those of you who have dogs or cats know that they have been conditioned to expect food following certain sights and sounds. Cats will come running when they hear a can opener. An anchor is a stimulus that produces a specific response. The response may be a thought, an emotion or feeling, or a behavior. In classical conditioning, the stimulus leads to the response. This is different from operant conditioning, in which a reward or punishment follows a behavior. People do those things that result in rewards, and they avoid, or at least attempt to avoid getting caught, doing things that result in punishment. Anchors can occur in every sensory system. Visual anchors are things you see that encourage a specific response. If you meet someone in a social context, for example, seeing an extended hand typically produces hand-shaking behavior. If you are driving, seeing a stoplight or stop sign typically produces stopping behavior. Auditory anchors are things you hear that encourage a specific response. Pavlov's tuning fork was an auditory anchor. For many, the national anthem is an important auditory anchor, creating feelings of national pride and, in certain circumstances, the behavior known as standing up. Many of us have a song that reminds us of a special time, place, or person. Hearing our name spoken typically produces head-turning behavior. Kinesthetic anchors can be based on any of the external kinesthetic senses: touch, taste, and smell. Virtually all anchors have a corresponding internal kinesthetic in that they produce a feeling along with a specific thought, such as the memory of the special time, place, or person, or behavior, such as standing for the national anthem. Anchoring may be established through repetition. The dogs had to hear the tuning fork just before the presentation of the meat powder several times to associate the two. Much human learning is anchored in through repetition. Most of us learned the alphabet by singing the alphabet song. Most of us learn the multiplication tables through repetition. Because the brain automatically notices relationships and makes connections, anchors may also be set without conscious awareness. This can happen over time through repetition, as happens in social conditioning for appropriate behaviors, or through a single significant experience. If you have a wonderful experience in a yellow room, for example, you may expect wonderful things to happen every time you enter a yellow room. Phobias often begin with the experience of an unpleasant anchor. If a child is bitten by a dog, he or she may become fearful about future encounters with dogs. Anchors may also be set deliberately for specific purposes. A visual anchor is set with an image or gesture. In the United States, politicians like to speak in front of the American flag. In this case, the flag is the equivalent of the meat powder, and the politician is the equivalent of the tuning fork. The politician wants the audience to respond to him or her the same way they respond to the flag. Politicians may also establish specific gestures as equivalent for things both good and bad, and then use those anchors to influence how the audience responds to certain ideas. Auditory anchors may be set with music, a specific sound, words, or analog voice marking. TV commercials typically use music to associate feelings with products and services. Chevy trucks, for example, were like a rock. All words are anchors. When I use the word truck, for example, your mind has a specific response. Analog voice marking is changing the pace, volume, or tonality of speech to ensure that certain words or phrases stand out. The words or phrases that stand out tend to be remembered. This is the reason politicians use what are often called talking points, such as tax and spend Democrats, or we can't afford 4 more years of the Bush-McCain economy. Kinesthetic anchors are set with a touch, a taste, or a smell. Kinesthetic anchors, especially touching, are the most effective when they can be used appropriately. People know when they have been touched, whereas they may not see a visual anchor and may not hear an auditory anchor. For many people, the taste of chocolate is a strong, positive, gustatory anchor. For this reason, it is considered a mood food. When people eat chocolate, their mood improves. Aromatherapy and the perfume industry are based on the anchoring power of the sense of smell. Mothers know that there is something special about the smell of baby powder. And both men and women tend to have strong positive responses to the smell of pumpkin pie. Visual and auditory anchors may be used in most conversational contexts. In such situations, anchoring happens whether you are consciously aware of it or not. When you are in conversation, you and the other person are setting anchors on each other, whether you are doing so well or badly. You are also having anchors set on you, whether you are aware of it or not. Sales representatives will typically attempt to influence your decision by associating their product or service with good feelings and good decisions in the past. Anchoring is one of the best ways to influence the outcome of any negotiation or conversation. Kinesthetic anchors can be used in more contexts than most people believe. Deborah and I once taught anchoring to a group of nurses who said they weren't allowed to touch patients. I asked them about taking blood pressure and giving shots. They admitted they touched people in those contexts. In thinking about touching patients, they had simply deleted their memories of all the times they touched patients appropriately. Some situations and occupations lend themselves to using kinesthetic anchors naturally. Massage therapists, dental hygienists, and others who work in contexts of implied permission need to be especially aware of what and how they are anchoring in the natural course of their work. Others need to be aware of when and how to use kinesthetic anchors appropriately. When you are first learning how to set anchors deliberately, kinesthetic anchors are the easiest to use, both for setting and for experiencing how they work to produce specific responses. Regardless of type, the most effective anchors are set at the peak of the feeling you wish to have associated with the anchor. Set the anchor when the other person is fully associated into the feeling. Catch someone feeling really good and set the anchor. Later, when you have the opportunity, test your anchor by replicating or reproducing it and see if the anchor elicits the good feelings. In our next training video, Deborah and I will demonstrate how to use anchors for therapeutic purposes, including setting anchors, stacking anchors, integrating or collapsing anchors, and using anchors to amplify and chain states. For even more information, see Section 6 of of the SCS training manual, Healing with Language.